Commander Vex Thor, the specimen is ready for your inspection, announced Lieutenant Paz, his crystalline exoskeleton glinting under the laboratory's harsh lights. I straightened my sensory appendages and glided toward the observation chamber. After 300 cycles of studying various species across the galaxy, I thought I had seen everything, but nothing could have prepared me for the peculiar creature before me. The human designation Marcus Chen sat calmly in the containment cell, his soft, exposed epidermis making my protective plates itch in sympathy. How had such a vulnerable species survived long enough to achieve spaceflight? The complete lack of natural armor was baffling. Fascinating, I muttered, tapping notes into my datapad. No scales, no plates, no crystalline structures. Not even basic chitin. Just this flimsy covering they call skin. Marcus Chen looked up, those strange forward-facing eyes fixing directly on me. A shiver ran through my plates. There was something unsettling about being watched by a predator species, even if this one appeared remarkably under-equipped. "Good morning," the human said pleasantly, voice carrying clearly through the audio sensors. "I don't suppose you'd be willing to adjust the temperature? It's a bit chilly in here." I clicked my mandibles in amusement. The specimen shows signs of environmental sensitivity, as expected from such an exposed organism. "The specimen can hear you," Marcus responded dryly. "And the specimen would really appreciate a blanket." Lieutenant Paz shuffled nervously beside me. "Sir, should we increase containment security? The databases suggest humans can be unpredictable." I waved a dismissive appendage. What could it possibly do? Look at it, no claws, no significant muscle mass, barely any protective covering. It's remarkable they've survived as long as they have. This will be the easiest research assessment of my career. The human's mouth curved upward in what our xenobiologists called a smile. According to our studies, this was a sign of amusement or pleasure. Though why the creature would find anything pleasurable about its current situation was beyond my comprehension. "Computer, begin preliminary observation log," I announced. Subject is a male human. Approximately 30 solar cycles old by their reckoning. Physical defenses appear to be virtually non-existent. No natural weapons detected. This study will focus on determining how such an obviously vulnerable species has managed to survive and achieve spaceflight capabilities. Marcus Chen stretched lazily in his cell, joints popping in a way that made my plates clatter involuntarily. "Oh, this is going to be fun," he said, that strange smile growing wider. "Just remember, Commander, you asked for this demonstration." I should have paid more attention to the glint in those predatory eyes, but I was too busy contemplating my imminent research breakthrough. After all, what could possibly go wrong? If only I had known then just how much I was underestimating humanity's capabilities. This was only the beginning of a very enlightening and humbling scientific endeavor. "You want me to do what now?" Marcus asked, eyebrows raised as he stood in the testing chamber. "Run until you achieve exhaustion," I repeated, adjusting the gravity controls. "Simple enough, yes." Behind me, Captain Rylara clicked her mandibles disapprovingly. She had arrived an hour ago, her silver-plated carapace marking her as a high-ranking official from Central Command. "Commander Vex Thor," she said, voice dripping with condescension. "Are you certain these parameters are correct? The gravity is set to 1.5 times their planetary standard." "Precisely," I replied. "We'll establish their limitations quickly and move on to more interesting." My voice trailed off as I watched the monitoring screen. Marcus had started jogging, his bare feet padding steadily on the track. 10 minutes passed, then 20, an hour. "Fascinating," I muttered. The specimen shows no signs of immediate fatigue. "Actually," Marcus called out, barely breathing hard, "I used to run marathons back home. This is like a nice warm-up." Captain Rylara's antenna twitched. "Impossible. Their muscle density readings are barely above baseline sentient requirements." 2 more hours passed. Marcus kept running. "All right," I announced, trying to keep the frustration from my voice. "Let's move to impact resistance testing." "Oh, good," Marcus said, finally slowing to a stop. I was getting bored. The next test involved dropping weights from increasing heights. Standard procedure for determining exoskeletal strength. Except, Sir Lieutenant Paz interrupted, the human is catching the weights. Indeed, Marcus stood there, casually snatching the falling metal spheres out of the air. You know, he said, juggling 3 of them with disturbing ease. If you wanted to test my reflexes, you could have just asked. Captain Rylara's composure cracked slightly. Increase mass by 200%. Add irregular dropping patterns. I watched in amazement as Marcus continued to dodge and catch, his movements becoming almost playful. When a sphere finally caught him on the shoulder, he simply grunted and rubbed the spot. That'll bruise, he commented cheerfully. Should heal up in a few days, though. Bruise, Captain Rylara demanded. What is this bruise? I pulled up the medical data. Apparently, humans develop temporary discoloration when their internal fluid vessels are damaged. But they repair themselves. All living things repair themselves, Rylara snapped. Yes, but not like this, I gestured to the historical data scrolling across my screen. Look at these records, broken bones that knit themselves together. Skin that closes its own wounds. They can even regenerate entire organs. Their liver, Lieutenant Paz added helpfully, can regrow up to 70% of its mass if damaged. Marcus sat down, stretching his legs. You should see what happens when we lose a fingernail. Grows right back. Captain Rylara's eye stalks quivered in disbelief. This makes no logical sense. Why would evolution produce a species with such regenerative capabilities but no external protection? Perhaps, I ventured, watching Marcus start doing one-armed push-ups out of apparent boredom because they don't need it. Nonsense, Rylara slammed an appendage on the control panel. Begin chemical resistance testing. What followed was both impressive and slightly disturbing. Acids that should have dissolved organic matter barely raised a rash. Toxins that could drop a Chronaxian war beast induced nothing more than mild nausea. Even direct exposure to radiation resulted in little more than an annoyed request for sunscreen. I'm just saying, Marcus commented while we hosed him down after the chemical trials. This feels like a workplace safety violation. I noticed Captain Rylara making frantic notes. The subject displays remarkable resistance to nearly all forms of environmental hazards, she muttered. Combined with the regenerative capabilities and that disturbing ability to maintain physical exertion. Don't forget our temperature range, Marcus added helpfully. We can survive from nearly freezing to well above your species' maximum tolerance. Oh, and we can go weeks without food if we have to. Weeks without. Rylara's voice trailed off. She turned all 4 eye stalks toward me. Commander Vex Thor, I believe we may need to reassess our initial classification of humans as a vulnerable species. I watched as Marcus performed a perfect handstand, just because he could. Captain, I replied slowly, I have a feeling we've only scratched the surface of what these beings are capable of. You have no idea, Marcus grinned, still upside down. Want to see what happens when you get us really motivated. Looking back, that should have been our first warning about what was coming next. Absolutely not, Captain Rylara declared, her plates rattling with agitation. No species can function in these conditions. We stood watching Marcus through the observatory window as the testing chamber cycled through increasingly hostile environments. The human sat cross-legged in the center, looking almost bored as scalding winds whipped around him. Temperature now at 45 degrees Celsius, Lieutenant Paz announced. Subject appears to be sweating. I checked the readings again. Fascinating. They have built-in liquid cooling systems. The moisture evaporates from their skin, regulating their body temperature. He's dripping water like a faulty cooling unit, Rylara observed with disgust. Marcus waved at us. Hey, this reminds me of summer in Phoenix, though the humidity's a bit low. We cycled the chamber to arid conditions next, then Arctic, then tropical. The human adapted to each with minimal complaints, though he did request something called a parka during the cold tests and wouldn't stop making jokes about beach weather during the humidity trials. Watch this, Marcus called out during the high-pressure test. He proceeded to hold his breath for over 3 minutes while doing jumping jacks. How Captain Rylara's voice cracked. Their oxygen requirements. Oh, that's nothing, Marcus said after finally taking a breath. World record for breath holding is over 24 minutes, though that's with special training. The news spread quickly through the research station. Soon, our observation deck was crowded with scientists from every department, all watching in horrified fascination as the human casually defied their understanding of biological limits. Let's try something more challenging, I suggested, trying to maintain some semblance of scientific professionalism. Computer, simulate high-radiation solar storm conditions. The chamber filled with crackling energy. Marcus simply lay down and appeared to take a nap. Is he sleeping? Lieutenant Paz asked incredulously. Our nap, Marcus corrected without opening his eyes. Wake me when you get to the really difficult stuff. Dr. Chen, our lead atmospheric specialist, burst into the control room. You have to see this. We've been analyzing their planetary data. These humans, they live everywhere on their world, every climate zone. Impossible, Rylara snapped. No species can. Deserts, tundra, rainforests, mountains, Dr. Chen continued, waving his data pad frantically. They built cities in places that should be uninhabitable. They swim in frozen oceans for fun. I watched as Marcus started doing yoga poses in what should have been lethal atmospheric pressure. They don't just survive, I realized. They thrive. And they're still evolving, Lieutenant Paz added. Their medical records show increasing adaptability with each generation. Some humans are developing additional tolerances to altitude, cold, even different atmospheric compositions. Captain Rylara's exoskeleton had taken on a distinctly pale hue. Are you suggesting they're actively adapting? Still. A small commotion broke out as another scientist rushed in. Commander, we found records of their extreme sports. Their what? Activities they do for entertainment. They jump out of high-altitude aircraft. They climb frozen mountains without protective gear. They run across entire continents. For fun. Marcus had apparently grown tired of yoga and was now doing one-finger push-ups in the high-gravity setting. You know what would make this more interesting, he called out. Maybe add some obstacles? This is getting kind of repetitive. I looked at my increasingly distressed colleagues, then back at the human who was treating our most extreme testing protocols like a light workout. I don't think that will be necessary, I replied carefully. I believe we've seen enough too. Incoming priority message from Central Command, Lieutenant Paz interrupted. There, requesting we begin combat capability assessment immediately. Marcus perked up visibly. Now that sounds like fun. Captain Rylara's antenna drooped. Commander Vex Thor, I believe we may have made a terrible mistake. Looking at the eager expression on our test subject's face, I couldn't help but agree. General Kaz Thar's arrival changed everything. His battle-scarred carapace and augmented cybernetic limbs spoke of countless military campaigns, yet even he seemed unprepared for what we witnessed that day. Begin standard combat simulation, he growled, mandibles clicking impatiently. Marcus stood in the center of the combat arena, still wearing nothing but the basic testing suit we'd provided. No armor, no weapons, just that unsettling smile. 3 Xenaxian battle drones deployed, Lieutenant Paz announced. Non-lethal compliance protocols active. The drones buzzed to life, their stun weapons humming. Marcus didn't move, just stood there, barefoot on the metal floor, looking almost bored. Commence capture protocol, General Kaz Thar ordered. What happened next still haunts my nightmares. Marcus didn't just fight the drones, he danced with them. Every movement was calculated, precise, and terrifyingly efficient. The first drone went down before its targeting systems could even lock on. The second lasted 12 seconds longer than the first. The third, well, we're still trying to figure out how he managed to reprogram it mid-combat using only its external sensor array. Fascinating, I muttered, taking notes. The specimen appears to be using the drone's own momentum against them, while simultaneously. Silence, General Kaz Thar snapped. Maximum difficulty. Deploy elite combat units. Captain Rylara's plates paled. Sir, the human hasn't been fitted with proper protective. Ow. 5 more drones dropped into the arena, these ones equipped with our most advanced combat AIs. Marcus actually laughed. Finally, he called out, cracking his knuckles. Something interesting. What followed wasn't combat. It was art. Brutal, terrifying art. Marcus moved like water, flowing between attacks, turning every failed strike against him into an opportunity. At one point, he actually started giving the drones combat advice. "See, if you'd adjusted your lateral thrust there," he commented while disassembling one drone using parts from another, "you might have caught me off guard." Amateur mistake, really. "Impossible," General Kazdar muttered. "The physical parameters, the reaction times, no one augmented being could." "Oh, this is nothing," Marcus said, now juggling drone parts. "You should see what humans can do in actual combat situations. Adrenaline's amazing stuff." "Adrenaline?" Captain Rylara queried. "Yeah, we've got this neat chemical cocktail our bodies pump out in dangerous situations. Makes us stronger, faster, basically turns off our pain receptors. Pretty handy." The entire observation deck fell silent. "They have an internal combat enhancement system." General Kazdar's voice had lost its edge of command. "Among other things," Marcus replied cheerfully. "We can also go into something called shock, which lets us keep fighting even with massive trauma. Plus there's this thing called runner's high that..." Enough, the general's mandibles were clicking rapidly now. This specimen, this human, they're not just survivors, they're walking battle tanks, Marcus suggested. "Yeah, we get that a lot. Though personally, I'm more of a lover than a fighter. This is just basic self-defense training." I watched as the most decorated military commander in our sector slowly backed away from the observation window. "Commander Vex Thor," he said quietly, "I suggest you increase security measures immediately. These humans, they're not just resilient, they're..." The lights went out. When they came back on 3 seconds later, Marcus was gone, along with half our security codes and what appeared to be a makeshift weapon crafted from drone parts. "Well," I sighed, watching Captain Rylara faint. "I suppose this concludes the combat assessment phase." General Kazdar just stared at the empty arena. "No, Commander. I believe this is where the real test begins." How Captain Rylara demanded, her plates now an alarming shade of pale blue. How did one single human compromise our entire security grid? I watched the chaos unfold on multiple security feeds, each showing a different aspect of our rapidly deteriorating situation. He didn't just escape, I realized. He's been planning this since the moment he arrived. General Kazdar slammed his cybernetic appendage against the console. "Explain." "Look at the pattern." I pointed to various screens. "The running tests? He was mapping our ventilation systems. The environmental trials? Learning our atmosphere processing capabilities. Even those ridiculous acrobatics during combat assessment. He was testing structural load limits," Lieutenant Paz whispered. "Every single test, every joke, every casual conversation." "Was reconnaissance," General Kazdar finished, his voice carrying an unfamiliar emotion. "Was it fear?" The station's comm system crackled to life. "Hey folks," Marcus's cheerful voice echoed through every speaker. "Hope you don't mind, but I made a few adjustments to your environmental controls. Nothing major, just dropped the temperature about 10 degrees. Figured you could use some cooling off time." "Impossible." Rylara checked the systems. "He's locked us out of primary environmental controls." "Actually," Marcus continued, "I locked you out of pretty much everything. Amazing what you can learn about a computer system while pretending to take a nap. Your encryption is pretty good, but you really should update your quantum protocols more often." I watched in horrified fascination as Marcus appeared on one security feed, casually walking through a supposedly sealed corridor. He waved at the camera. "By the way, those drone parts I borrowed? Really impressive tech. Took me all of 5 minutes to reverse engineer the basic principles. You might want to check the maintenance bots, by the way. They're acting a bit independent now." As if on cue, every cleaning drone in the facility suddenly stopped its routine. Then, as one, they began moving toward the station's supply depot. "The human has weaponized our maintenance systems," General Kazdar growled. "Deploy security teams to all critical sectors." About that, Marcus's voice carried a hint of amusement. Remember those combat drones you so kindly let me practice with? Turns out their friend-foe recognition systems are surprisingly easy to modify, especially when you have access to the main security network. Lieutenant Paz's antenna went rigid. Sir, the security drones are not responding to commands. Oh, and thanks for the fascinating lecture on your life support systems during the environmental trials, Marcus continued. Really helped me understand how to isolate different sections of the station. Speaking of which. Suddenly, warning lights flashed across every deck. Multiple hull breaches detected, Paz shouted. Emergency bulkheads activating. Don't worry, Marcus assured us. Nobody's in any real danger. Just needed to redirect your security teams through the long way around. Hope nobody's in a hurry. The specimen's tactical understanding, General Kazdar muttered. The speed of adaptation. The psychological warfare. Really, you all made this too easy, Marcus's voice took on a lecturing tone. First rule of containing humans? Don't give them access to technology they can understand. Second rule? Don't assume they're not paying attention just because they're making jokes. I watched as he casually bypassed another security checkpoint, using a makeshift key card fashioned from. Was that a food dispenser's control panel? The environmental tests were particularly helpful, he continued. Now I know exactly which sections of the station I can safely pass through without protection. Did you know your emergency suit storage has terrible security? Just thought you should know. Captain Rylara was frantically trying to restore system access. He's not just escaping, she realized. He's teaching us a lesson. Third rule of containing humans, Marcus added. Never, ever assume they're working alone. The main docking bay's doors suddenly began cycling open. What's he doing? Paz asked. There aren't any ships docked right now. A sleek vessel materialized out of nowhere, its stealth systems powering down. Commander Vex Thor, a new voice came over the comm. This is Agent Nova Bright of Earth's Special Operations Division. Thank you for taking such good care of our operative. My plates nearly fell off. Operative. You didn't think we'd let you capture a random human, did you? Marcus asked, now visible on the docking bay camera. We've been wanting to assess your security capabilities for months. Thanks for the invitation. This whole thing, General Kazdar's voice was barely a whisper. The capture, the tests, the escape. Was a penetration test, Agent Bright confirmed. Quite successful too. Marcus, are you ready for extraction? Just sending our hosts a parting gift, Marcus replied. Accessing their central database now. You know, for a species so focused on protection, your cybersecurity is remarkably soft. Every screen in the command center suddenly filled with data. Our data, but not about humans. Consider this a friendly exchange, Marcus said. Everything you learned about us, plus a detailed analysis of every vulnerability we found in your systems. Fair trade, right? The last security feed showed him boarding the stealth ship, still barefoot, still smiling. Oh, and Commander Vex Thor, he called out. Thanks for the workout. It was fun. As the ship vanished from our sensors, I looked at the stunned faces around me. I believe I said slowly, we need to update our assessment of humanity's capabilities. Again. Indeed, General Kazdar agreed. And perhaps, consider offering them an alliance before they decide to test any more of our facilities. The maintenance drones, now forming what appeared to be a conga line, beeped cheerfully in agreement. Target spotted in Section 7. Lieutenant Paz's voice cracked with stress. No, wait, Section 12? That's impossible. No one can move that fast. I watched in disbelief as Marcus appeared on multiple security feeds, seemingly teleporting across the station. The security teams were running themselves ragged, always 2 steps behind. Look at the ventilation shaft access points, Captain Rylara pointed frantically. He's using the maintenance tunnels as a private highway system. A security team burst into what they thought was a trapped corridor, only to find Marcus balanced on a ceiling pipe, grinning down at them. Hey guys, quick question, did you know your artificial gravity can be localized? Because I just found out. He tapped something on a stolen datapad, and suddenly the entire security team was floating helplessly while he casually walked across the ceiling. "The specimen is displaying advanced understanding of our fundamental technologies," General Kazdar growled, "and turning them against us with disturbing creativity." We watched as Marcus launched himself through a supposedly secure airlock, using the pressure difference to propel himself across a 30-meter gap between sections. He rolled to his feet and gave the camera a thumbs up. "Your architecture is amazing," by the way, his voice echoed through the hijacked comm system. "All these exposed beams and pipes. It's like you designed it specifically for parkour." "What is this?" Parkour Ralara demanded. As if in answer, Marcus proceeded to run straight up a wall, flip over a security barrier, slide under a closing blast door, and bounce off 3 different surfaces to reach a supposedly inaccessible maintenance hatch. That, he said, pausing to wave at another camera, was parkour. "Also, whoever designed your security systems clearly never dealt with human teenagers. These barriers are basically a gymnastics course." Another security team rounded a corner, armed with stun weapons. Marcus grabbed a loose pipe, swung around it like some kind of acrobat, and used the momentum to launch himself into an overhead duct. His voice drifted back too slow, but good effort though. "How is he navigating the station so efficiently?" General Kazdar demanded. Lieutenant Paz checked the systems. "Sir, he memorized the entire station layout during the initial testing phase while doing handstands." Speaking of testing, Marcus's voice cut in. "Your atmospheric processing units make excellent improvised launch pads. Watch this." We stared in horror as he used a burst of compressed air to rocket himself across the main cargo bay, somersaulting through the air with absolutely no regard for personal safety. "This defies all known laws of biomechanics," Ralara shouted. "The strain on their skeletal structure alone should—" "Oh, please," Marcus interrupted, now running along a narrow pipe over a 50-meter drop. "This is nothing. Wait till you see what humans do when they're actually trying to show off." General Kazdar's cybernetic eye twitched. No species should be capable of. "By the way," Marcus called out, sliding under another security barrier, "your emergency protocols need work. I found 17 different ways to bypass them so far. Want me to demonstrate another one?" Before anyone could respond, he had somehow turned 2 cleaning drones into makeshift rocket skates and was zooming down a corridor, leaving a trail of very confused security officers in his wake. This isn't an escape, I realized, watching him casually defy physics and common sense with each new maneuver. This is a performance. A demonstration, General Kazdar agreed grimly, of exactly why their species doesn't need natural armor. On the screens, Marcus was now teaching some maintenance drones how to play hopscotch, while hanging upside down from a power conduit. After all, I concluded, what use is armor when you can simply treat the laws of physics as optional guidelines? I found Marcus in my private research lab, casually sitting in my chair, feet propped up on my desk. The stolen datapad displayed classified files I didn't even know existed. "Commander Vex Thor," he nodded politely. "Have a seat. We need to talk." "About how you infiltrated our most secure facility?" I asked, mandibles clicking nervously. "About why we let you think you had captured me," Marcus replied, his smile turning serious. "Check the file marked Project Guardian." My appendages trembled as I read. "This is impossible. We detected no ships in the sector when—" "You detected exactly what we wanted you to detect," he said. "Just like you captured exactly who we wanted you to capture, right when your defense grid was scheduled for its quarterly testing." The implications hit me like a gravity wave. Your entire captivity was an evaluation, Marcus confirmed. Humanity needed to know if your species would be suitable partners for the Galactic Defense Initiative. Partners, my plates nearly fell off in shock. "But we were studying you." "No, Commander. We were studying each other. And I have to say, your results are promising. Your technology is innovative, your scientific curiosity is admirable, and most importantly, you showed genuine concern for my well-being during testing." Then the escape. The chaos. "A stress test," he shrugged. Had to see how you'd handle unexpected situations. Plus, it was fun. A new figure materialized in the lab. Agent Nova Bright, her stealth field dissipating. The Zeridian Empire is expanding again, she said without preamble. Earth needs allies who understand both scientific advancement and ethical boundaries. And you chose us, I asked, still struggling to process everything. We chose to give you a chance, Marcus corrected. Consider the past few hours a preview of what humanity can offer as allies. Now, imagine what we could accomplish together. I looked at the data showing the Xeridian advance, then at these humans who had so thoroughly outmaneuvered us while making it look like child's play. Where do I sign? I asked. Marcus grinned. See? I told you they were smart. Nova, he stood up, stretching casually. Now who's hungry? All this escaping and diplomatic revelations worked up my appetite. And that's how humanity gained their first major galactic alliance. Not through force of arms or diplomatic pressure, but through an elaborate game of cosmic show and tell.